Inner stillness is your greatest power. Buddhist wisdom. There are moments in life when the world feels unbearably loud. The pressure of expectations, the noise of opinions, the anxiety of the future, and the weight of past memories collide within us, leaving the mind restless and exhausted. It is in these moments that we often crave something simple yet profound: peace. But peace is not something that appears by chance. It is cultivated, built intentionally, and accessed through the inner stillness that lies deep within every human being. This stillness is not the absence of sound or the absence of activity. It is the presence of clarity. It is a state where the mind returns to its natural rhythm, where awareness expands beyond fear, and where wisdom takes the place of emotional turbulence. Buddhist teachings, preserved through centuries by monks, sages, and practitioners, have repeatedly emphasized that inner stillness is not only a refuge, but also a source of immense power. It allows you to observe life without being consumed by it, to feel deeply without drowning, and to respond with awareness instead of reacting with impulse. Inner stillness is the foundation of insight, compassion, emotional maturity, and spiritual awakening. And although many people believe that stillness must be found in remote temples or hidden retreats, the truth is that inner stillness is accessible to anyone, anywhere, at any time, because it lives within you. In a world filled with distractions, practicing stillness becomes an act of courage. It requires the willingness to sit with your thoughts instead of escaping them, to look within instead of looking outward, and to silence the noise of ego so the voice of wisdom can emerge. True stillness is not escape, it is mastery. It is not passive, it is powerful. It does not weaken you, it transforms you. And when you learn to cultivate this internal quietness, you begin to notice how life becomes clearer, relationships become healthier, emotions become lighter, and challenges lose their ability to destabilize you. In this text, divided into 5 deep and extensive topics, we will explore the profound meaning of inner stillness according to Buddhist wisdom. Each topic will reveal a new layer of understanding, guiding you toward the realization that inner stillness is not something you seek. It is something you uncover. It already exists within you, waiting for you to choose it. Through these teachings, you will learn how stillness becomes strength, how silence becomes clarity, and how the mind becomes a powerful instrument when no longer governed by external chaos. Let us begin with the first step on this journey: the nature of inner stillness and why it transforms your life. Inner stillness is often misunderstood as a feeling, a temporary state of calm that appears when life is serene. But in Buddhist wisdom, inner stillness is not defined by external conditions. It is an inherent quality of the mind itself, often buried beneath layers of noise, fear, attachment, desire, and mental agitation. Stillness is not created, it is uncovered. Just as a lake becomes clear when the winds stop disturbing its surface, the mind returns to clarity when we stop feeding it with unnecessary turbulence. The lake was always capable of reflecting the sky. It simply needed the surface to settle. Likewise, your mind has always been capable of reflecting truth, wisdom, and peace. It simply needs space to breathe, silence to expand, and stillness to reveal its true nature. To understand why inner stillness is so transformative, one must first understand how the mind functions in its ordinary state. The human mind is constantly engaged in movement, thinking, planning, judging, fearing, remembering, imagining, and reacting. These movements are not inherently negative. They are part of the natural functioning of the mind. The problem arises when these movements become excessive, uncontrolled, and unconscious. When the mind is left unchecked, it becomes a whirlpool of worries and impulses. constantly pulling your attention away from the present moment. In this state, you are not living life, you are reacting to it. Inner stillness disrupts this pattern. It introduces a gap between stimulus and reaction, a sacred pause where awareness can intervene. In that pause, you regain control of your inner world. You observe instead of absorb. You understand instead of fear. You respond instead of react. This single shift in consciousness is enough to alter the direction of your entire life. The greatest suffering does not come from what happens to you, but from how your mind interprets it. Inner stillness allows you to see reality clearly, without the distortions created by fear, ego, or anxiety. To cultivate inner stillness, it is essential to recognize that stillness is not the same as silence. You can be in a quiet room and still experience inner chaos. Conversely, you can be in a noisy environment and remain completely centered. This is because stillness is not external. It is internal. It is not the absence of sound, but the absence of disturbance. It is not achieved by controlling your environment, but by mastering your internal landscape. Many people travel far away seeking peace, but when they arrive, they bring their untrained mind with them, and the restlessness continues. Buddhism teaches that peace is not found in a place, but in a state of awareness. One of the most profound realizations in Buddhist wisdom is that the mind becomes restless when it is attached to something, an idea, an expectation, a desire, a fear, a memory, a belief, or an outcome. Attachment creates agitation. When you cling to how things should be, you resist how things are. That resistance generates suffering. Inner stillness emerges naturally when attachment dissolves. The mind no longer fights reality. It flows with it. Instead of forcing life to meet your expectations, you allow life to unfold as it must. And in that acceptance, true tranquility arises. Meditation is the most well-known path to cultivating inner stillness. But meditation is not simply sitting with your eyes closed. Meditation is the art of observing the mind without becoming the mind. It is learning to witness your thoughts without being consumed by them. In meditation, you realize that thoughts are like clouds. They come and go, but they are not the sky. The sky, your awareness, remains vast, open, and unaffected. When you identify with the clouds, you forget the sky. When you reconnect with awareness, inner stillness naturally blooms. Another crucial aspect of inner stillness is the realization that the mind is not your enemy. Many people begin their spiritual journey believing they must suppress or eliminate their thoughts to achieve peace. But stillness does not come from force. It comes from understanding. When you begin to observe your thoughts with curiosity instead of judgment, with compassion instead of resistance, the mind gradually calms on its own. You no longer feed the thoughts that cause chaos. Instead, you create space between yourself and the noise. That space is stillness. Inner stillness also brings clarity, a clarity that transforms your decisions, your relationships, and your emotional responses. When the mind is quiet, wisdom becomes louder. You begin to notice what truly matters and what does not. You recognize which problems deserve your attention and which are simply distractions. You start to understand people more deeply because you are no longer listening through the filter of your own emotional noise. You see situations as they are, not as your fears interpret them. This clarity becomes a powerful guide, allowing you to navigate life with confidence, wisdom, and grounded awareness. Furthermore, inner stillness strengthens emotional resilience. When your mind is constantly agitated, every small challenge feels overwhelming. But when stillness becomes your foundation, difficulties no longer shake you the same way. You may feel pain, disappointment, or sadness, but you do not become those emotions. You remain grounded. Stillness teaches you that emotions are waves. They rise, peak, and dissolve. And when you stop attaching meaning to every wave, You learn to ride them with grace instead of drowning in them. This emotional resilience allows you to move through life with strength, presence, and balance. Inner stillness also deepens your connection with yourself. In the silence of your own awareness, you begin to uncover truths about your life that constant mental noise had hidden. You understand your patterns, your wounds, your strengths, and your desires with greater honesty. Many people fear stillness because they fear meeting themselves. They fear what might rise to the surface when the distractions disappear. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that you cannot heal what you avoid. When you sit in stillness, you meet yourself completely, not to judge, but to understand. And understanding leads to freedom. In the modern world, inner stillness has become more important than ever. With the constant stimulation of technology, notifications, social comparison, and external noise, the mind rarely gets a moment of rest. This constant mental stimulation drains your attention, increases anxiety, and disconnects you from your inner world. Stillness becomes an act of reclaiming your mind from a world that profits from your distraction. When you cultivate inner stillness, you reclaim your ability to think clearly, feel deeply, and live intentionally. Ultimately, inner stillness is the gateway to spiritual awakening. When the noise quiets, the truth emerges. You begin to understand that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your fears, and not your past. You are the awareness behind them. That awareness is peaceful, spacious, and unchanging. It is your true nature. Stillness is simply the process of returning home to yourself. This is why Buddhist wisdom teaches that inner stillness is your greatest power. It transforms how you see the world, how you relate to others, how you navigate challenges, and how you understand yourself. It gives you the strength to remain calm in chaos, the clarity to choose wisely, and the insight to live fully. When you master your inner world, the outer world loses its ability to control you, and in that freedom, you discover a form of power that no one can take away. Before moving to the next topic, if you are finding value in this journey toward deeper wisdom and inner transformation, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can receive more teachings like this and continue expanding your awareness with each new video. The path to stillness through awareness. The journey toward inner stillness begins not by changing the world around you, but by transforming the way you relate to it. In Buddhist thought, the mind is both the source of suffering and the key to liberation. The same mind that creates restlessness through craving, fear, and illusion can also generate serenity through awareness, understanding, and detachment. The difference lies in direction, whether consciousness turns outward toward noise and desire or inward toward insight and truth. The practice of awareness is the bridge between these two states. Through awareness, you begin to see the mechanics of your mind clearly, to understand the roots of your emotions, and to separate illusion from reality. This clarity gradually unfolds into stillness, like dawn illuminating a landscape that was once hidden in darkness. Awareness, in Buddhist wisdom, is not mere observation. It is an active and compassionate attention to the present moment. It means being fully awake to what is happening within and around you, without judgment, resistance, or attachment. Most people live their lives half asleep, driven by automatic habits, unconscious reactions, and emotional conditioning. They do not act, they react. Awareness interrupts this mechanical existence and reintroduces consciousness into the flow of life. It allows you to see your thoughts as passing phenomena, not as absolute truth. It enables you to perceive emotions without being enslaved by them. It gives you the space to pause before you speak, to breathe before you decide, and to observe before you judge. That space, that silent distance between impulse and action, is the seed of inner stillness. When you begin to live with awareness, you realize that much of your inner turmoil does not come from life itself, but from your resistance to it. The mind constantly argues with reality. It wants the pleasant to last forever and the unpleasant to disappear instantly. This resistance creates internal friction, a tension between what is and what the mind wishes to be. Awareness teaches acceptance, not passive resignation, but an intelligent recognition that fighting against what already is serves no purpose. When you observe an emotion like anger, instead of identifying with it, you allow it to pass through awareness without clinging to it. You recognize that anger is a temporary visitor, not a permanent identity. By doing this, you dissolve its power. Stillness arises not because the emotion vanishes, but because you stop feeding it with resistance and identification. You simply let it be. In this letting be, the storm loses its strength and peace naturally follows. To cultivate this level of awareness, you must learn to slow down the pace of your inner dialogue. The mind is a restless storyteller. It constantly narrates, judges, compares, and anticipates. Awareness is like a light that reveals this process. When you start observing your thoughts instead of following them, you notice patterns that were invisible before. You begin to see how quickly the mind jumps from one worry to another, how it builds entire scenarios based on fear, and how it attaches meaning to random events. Awareness allows you to detach from this mental noise, not by fighting it, but by understanding it. You realize that most of your suffering is self-created, not by what happens, but by how the mind interprets it. This realization does not come as an intellectual concept, but as a direct experience that arises in moments of still observation. The Buddha described awareness as right mindfulness, one of the core elements of the Noble Eightfold Path. Mindfulness is the ability to remain fully present without being lost in thought. When you are mindful, you eat, walk, breathe, speak, and listen with full attention. You are no longer divided between what you are doing and what you are thinking about. The mind that dwells in the present moment cannot suffer because suffering depends on either regret for the past or fear of the future. Awareness liberates you from this temporal prison and returns you to the now, the only moment that truly exists. When awareness deepens, even ordinary activities become sacred. Washing your hands, drinking tea, or watching the sunrise becomes a form of meditation because you are fully alive in that moment. The mind no longer rushes to the next thing. It rests in what is. However, awareness requires practice. The mind has been conditioned for years to live in distraction, to chase after sensations, and to resist silence. At first, sitting quietly and observing your thoughts may feel uncomfortable. The mind will rebel. It will insist on movement. You may feel boredom, restlessness, or irritation, but these are signs that awareness is working. You are beginning to see what was always there, the endless chatter that previously went unnoticed. Do not try to stop the thoughts. Simply watch them come and go. As you continue, the distance between you and the thought increases. You begin to realize that you are not the content of the mind, but the awareness observing it. This is a profound shift, one that slowly dismantles the ego's dominance. The ego survives through identification. It needs you to believe that every thought and emotion defines you. Awareness breaks that identification. The more you observe, the more the ego loses control, and the more stillness emerges. The power of awareness extends beyond meditation cushions and quiet moments. True awareness must permeate your daily life. When you are speaking with someone, be fully present. Listen not only to their words, but also to their tone, their silence, their energy. When you eat, taste each bite without rushing. When you walk, feel your steps connect with the ground. Awareness is not limited to formal practice. It is a way of living. The more you bring awareness to everyday activities, the more peaceful your mind becomes. It is impossible to remain anxious when you are completely present. Anxiety lives in time, in what might happen. Presence lives outside of time, in what is. The two cannot coexist. When awareness dominates, fear dissolves like mist under sunlight. But awareness does more than bring peace. It reveals truth. When the mind is still, perception becomes clear. You start to see the impermanence of all things, one of the central insights of Buddhism. You notice how every emotion, sensation and thought arises, lingers for a moment and fades away. Nothing lasts. Everything is in constant flux. This realization can be unsettling at first, because the ego craves stability and control. But when you truly understand impermanence, you no longer cling to fleeting experiences for happiness. You stop chasing pleasure and resisting pain, because you know both are transient. Awareness allows you to rest in the unchanging witness behind the flow of change. That witness, your true self, is where stillness resides. When you identify with that awareness instead of with the content of experience, life becomes lighter, freer, and more fluid. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate awareness is through conscious breathing. Breath is the link between the body and the mind. When you focus on your breath, you anchor yourself in the present. The mind cannot wander far when it is gently tied to the rhythm of breathing. This is why many Buddhist teachers emphasize breath meditation. Each inhalation and exhalation becomes an opportunity to return home, to ground yourself in awareness. As you breathe consciously, you notice that thoughts slow down, emotions soften, and space opens within you. In that space, stillness grows naturally. The breath is not just a physical function, it is a reminder of impermanence. Each breath arising and passing like all things. When you become aware of your breathing, you are not controlling life. You are aligning with it. Another aspect of awareness is observing sensations in the body. The body carries stories that the mind has forgotten, unprocessed emotions, old traumas, repressed feelings. When you sit in stillness and bring awareness to the body, these sensations often surface. Instead of running from them, Buddhist wisdom invites you to meet them with compassion. Awareness without judgment is healing. When you feel a tightness in the chest or heaviness in the stomach, observe it. Name it silently if you must, but do not analyze or resist it. Simply be with it. The sensation will rise and eventually fade, just like a wave returning to the ocean. This process dissolves emotional residue and restores balance. Stillness is not the absence of feeling. It is the full acceptance of every feeling without becoming lost in it. The practice of awareness also teaches humility. When you observe your own mind, you begin to see how limited and biased perception can be. You realize how often you project your fears onto others, how easily you mistake opinions for truths, and how quickly you judge without understanding. Awareness reveals these patterns not to shame you, but to liberate you from them. In seeing your own ignorance, compassion for others naturally arises. You understand that everyone is struggling with their own inner noise, their own illusions and attachments. This realization softens your heart. Compassion and awareness are two wings of the same bird. One cannot fly without the other. As your awareness deepens, your compassion expands. And as your compassion grows, your awareness becomes more refined. Together, they lead to a profound inner peace, a stillness that no external event can disturb. In Buddhist philosophy, awareness is also the foundation of wisdom. Wisdom does not come from information, but from direct experience seen through the lens of awareness. You can read 1,000 books about peace and still remain restless if you have not experienced awareness directly. Wisdom arises when you observe life without filters. You begin to understand the nature of suffering, that it arises from attachment, aversion, and ignorance. With awareness, you see how the mind constantly chases pleasure and avoids pain, creating an endless cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. When this pattern becomes clear, you naturally begin to let go. The letting go is not forced. It happens effortlessly because you see the futility of clinging. Awareness reveals truth, and truth liberates. That liberation is stillness. Another dimension of awareness is its relationship with time. The ordinary mind lives in time. It constantly oscillates between past and future. Awareness lives outside of time. It perceives the eternal now. The past exists only as memory, and the future only as imagination. Yet, most human suffering comes from these two illusions. We replay past mistakes or worry about future outcomes, rarely realizing that both exist only in thought. Awareness dissolves this illusion. When you rest in awareness, time loses its grip. You experience the fullness of being here, now. This timeless presence is not dull or passive. It is vibrant, alive, and vast. It is the same stillness that ancient monks described when they said, "When the mind is silent, the universe sings." However, cultivating awareness is not about perfection. There will be days when the mind feels chaotic and nights when emotions overwhelm you. Stillness does not mean you will never experience disturbance. It means you will not be enslaved by it. Each time you fall into distraction and notice it, that moment of noticing is awareness. Every return to presence strengthens your inner stillness. Progress on the path is measured not by how often you get lost, but by how quickly you return. The Buddha compared the mind to a wild elephant that must be trained patiently. You do not beat the elephant into submission, you guide it with kindness. The same applies to awareness. It requires patience, discipline, and compassion. One of the greatest obstacles to awareness is the attachment to identity. The mind loves labels. I am angry, I am anxious, I am successful, I am a failure. But awareness has no labels. It is pure consciousness beyond identity. When you observe your thoughts without identification, you begin to see that these labels are temporary constructs, not truths. The real I is not the story. It is the observer of the story. As this insight deepens, the grip of ego weakens and stillness expands. You stop defending opinions, stop proving worth, stop seeking validation. The energy that was once spent maintaining the illusion of identity becomes available for presence. This shift brings immense freedom. You no longer depend on circumstances to feel at peace because your peace comes from within. Awareness also transforms how you experience relationships. Most conflicts arise because people listen not to understand, but to react. The mind interprets everything through the lens of self, how it affects me, how it threatens me, how it benefits me. Awareness removes this self-centered filter. When you are truly present with another person, listening without mental commentary, you create space for real connection. The other person feels seen, not judged. Communication becomes an act of compassion rather than competition. Stillness within you invites stillness in others. In this way, awareness not only transforms the individual, but also radiates peace into the collective. As awareness matures, you begin to notice subtle shifts in your perception of reality. The boundary between you and the world starts to dissolve. You realize that the observer and the observed are not separate. The same consciousness that witnesses your thoughts is the same consciousness that animates the universe. This non-dual realization is the essence of enlightenment. It cannot be forced or intellectually grasped. It arises naturally when awareness becomes continuous and effortless. In this state, every moment becomes sacred. You see beauty in imperfection, harmony in chaos, and divinity in simplicity. You understand that stillness is not something you achieve, it is what remains when everything false is seen through. To sustain awareness, you must nurture the conditions that support it. This includes simplicity in lifestyle, moderation in desires, and regular periods of solitude. A cluttered life mirrors a cluttered mind. When you simplify your surroundings and your commitments, awareness flourishes more easily. Solitude is particularly essential. It allows you to recharge your inner energy, to reflect, and to reconnect with your center. But solitude does not necessarily mean physical isolation. It means being at peace with yourself even when you are alone. The more comfortable you become in your own presence, the less dependent you become on external distractions for fulfillment. In solitude, awareness deepens, and stillness becomes your natural state. Over time, awareness transforms into an effortless presence. You no longer need to remind yourself to be mindful. Mindfulness becomes who you are. The line between meditation and life disappears. Walking, speaking, working, or resting all become expressions of stillness. You realize that awareness is not something you practice for a few minutes a day. It is the essence of existence itself. In this realization, every experience becomes an opportunity to awaken. Every breath is sacred. Every moment is complete. You are no longer chasing life. You are living it. This is the path to stillness through awareness. It is not a path of escape, but of return. Returning to your true nature, which is vast, peaceful, and unshakable. The more you cultivate awareness, the more you realize that nothing external can disturb the peace that arises from within. Challenges will still come, emotions will still rise, but awareness turns them into teachers instead of enemies. Each difficulty becomes an invitation to deepen stillness, to remain anchored in the unchanging center of your being. Eventually, you understand that awareness itself is the greatest act of love you can offer yourself and the world. Because through awareness, suffering dissolves and compassion blooms naturally. When you live in awareness, every step becomes meditation. Every breath becomes prayer, and every silence becomes a doorway to the infinite. You no longer seek peace, you embody it. You no longer chase happiness, you radiate it. This is the transformation that Buddhist wisdom points toward, a stillness so deep that nothing can shake it, a clarity so vast that it embraces all of life without fear. It is here, in this awareness, that the greatest power of the human spirit is revealed. And before we continue to the next topic, if you are finding meaning and guidance in this journey toward inner stillness and conscious awareness, remember to subscribe to the channel. Doing so will allow you to keep walking this path of peace and wisdom together, deepening your understanding with each new teaching that unfolds. The silence that speaks, how inner stillness reveals truth. There comes a moment in every spiritual journey when words lose their power, when explanations begin to dissolve, and when understanding can no longer be reached through intellect alone. It is the moment when silence becomes the teacher. Silence, in Buddhist wisdom, is not emptiness or absence. It is fullness. It is the unspoken space where truth resides. The great masters have always said that the ultimate reality cannot be described. It can only be experienced. The deeper you move into stillness, the clearer this truth becomes. Words are like fingers pointing at the moon. They are not the moon itself. Stillness is the direct experience of the moonlight, the quiet illumination that does not depend on sound, movement, or explanation. To live in stillness is to live in direct contact with truth. When the mind becomes quiet, perception changes. What once seemed ordinary begins to radiate meaning. You start to notice the subtle beauty of existence, the way light falls on a wall, the rhythm of your breath, the sound of distant rain. The ego no longer rushes to interpret or label, it simply allows things to be. This simple act of allowing is the foundation of inner freedom. When you stop trying to control or explain life, you begin to experience it fully. The silence within you becomes a mirror that reflects reality exactly as it is, without distortion. This clarity is wisdom. It does not come from books, theories, or external authorities. It arises spontaneously when the mind is still enough to see clearly. In silence, you encounter yourself without masks. The endless roles you play, the successful one, the victim, the seeker, the lover, the fighter, fall away. What remains is awareness itself, vast and unconditioned. At first, this can feel disorienting. The ego resists dissolution because it draws its existence from noise and movement. The silence exposes its fragility. It shows that the identity you have protected for so long is not permanent, not real, not who you truly are. And yet, within that exposure lies liberation. When you stop clinging to who you think you are, you create space for who you actually are to emerge. This is not an identity. It is pure being, beyond description or definition. It is awareness, witnessing itself. In that awareness, there is no past and no future, only the timeless presence of now. Stillness reveals that most of what you call knowledge is noise. The mind constantly collects opinions, beliefs, memories, and theories, but none of these can give you truth. Truth is not conceptual, it is experiential. It cannot be contained in thought because thought is limited by language, and language divides. The moment you label something, you separate it from the whole. Silence removes that division. It allows you to perceive directly, without the interference of interpretation. This is why meditation often feels like unlearning. You are not gaining new ideas. You are shedding the old ones that prevent you from seeing clearly. In this shedding, stillness grows. And as stillness grows, truth begins to unfold naturally. The silence that arises from stillness is not passive. It is alive, vibrant, and intelligent. It communicates without words. In moments of deep silence, insights often appear spontaneously, not as thoughts you generate, but as revelations that seem to emerge from nowhere. It is as if life itself is whispering to you. Many monks describe this as the moment when existence begins to teach directly. You realize that you do not need to chase truth, because truth is already present in everything. It has been speaking all along. You simply could not hear it over the noise of the mind. When silence becomes your companion, life itself becomes scripture, and every experience becomes a verse in the sacred text of existence. The practice of cultivating this inner silence begins with listening, not just to others, but to yourself, to your thoughts, to your surroundings, to the subtle hum of life. True listening is rare. Most people do not listen. They wait to respond. They filter everything through the lens of ego, judging, comparing, agreeing or disagreeing. But when you listen from stillness, without agenda or defense, something extraordinary happens. You begin to perceive beyond words. You feel the energy behind the voice, the truth behind the story, the intention behind the words. Silence sharpens perception because it removes the interference of thought. In silence, you do not just hear, you understand. One of the great paradoxes of inner silence is that it makes you more alive. Many people fear silence because they associate it with emptiness, loneliness, or death. But silence is not absence, it is presence intensified. In silence, the senses awaken. You taste, see, and feel with greater depth. The simplest things become profound because your awareness is no longer scattered. A single breath feels like an entire universe. The chirping of a bird becomes a symphony. The act of being alive becomes a miracle. The world does not change. Your perception does. And this shift in perception is what Buddhism refers to as awakening. It is not a mystical event reserved for saints. It is the natural result of sustained stillness. Yet silence is not always comfortable at first. When external distractions fade, the mind's inner chaos becomes louder. Old fears, regrets, and desires rise to the surface. This is the stage where many turn away, mistaking the noise for failure. But this is precisely where transformation begins. The silence acts like a mirror, revealing everything that was hidden beneath the surface. It is not punishing you, it is purifying you. The thoughts and emotions that arise are not obstacles. They are the contents of the unconscious seeking release. If you can remain present, observing without resistance, the energy of these emotions dissolves naturally. Each time you face a wave of inner turbulence with calm awareness, your stillness deepens. Eventually, the storms lose their power, and what remains is pure clarity. This process of purification through silence is one of the most sacred experiences a human being can undergo. It is the mind's return to its original nature, clear, open, and compassionate. In the deepest stillness, you realize that you do not need to fix yourself because there was never anything wrong with you. The noise was never you, it was simply movement passing through you. When this understanding dawns, guilt, shame, and regret begin to lose their grip. Forgiveness arises naturally, not as an effort, but as an inevitable consequence of seeing the truth. You forgive others not because they deserve it, but because you recognize that everyone is trapped in the same noise. You forgive yourself because you finally see that ignorance, not evil, drives human suffering. Silence makes this understanding possible. It connects you to the compassion that is not sentimental, but rooted in wisdom. The great teachers often spoke of silence as the highest form of teaching. The Buddha himself would sometimes respond to deep questions with silence, not because he did not know the answer, but because the answer could not be conveyed through words. To speak of truth is to diminish it. The true answer must be realized in direct experience. In the same way, when you enter deep silence, you begin to receive teachings from life that no book or master can provide. You start to sense the underlying unity behind all things, the interconnectedness of existence. You see that everything is part of a greater whole, moving in perfect balance, even when the surface appears chaotic. Silence reveals this harmony. It shows that behind every appearance there is order, behind every pain there is purpose, behind every end there is continuation. In silence, the veil of illusion begins to lift. But living in silence does not mean withdrawing from the world. It means engaging with the world from a place of depth and clarity. You can speak from silence, act from silence, love from silence. When silence is your foundation, your words carry power because they come from truth, not reaction. Your actions become more precise because they are guided by awareness, not impulse. Your relationships become more harmonious because you listen deeply and respond authentically. Silence does not make you distant. It makes you real. It strips away pretenses and allows genuine connection to flourish. People are drawn to those who radiate inner stillness because stillness feels safe. It reminds them of what they have lost in themselves. The silence within you also transforms your relationship with time. When the mind is noisy, time feels fragmented. There is always something to chase, something to regret, something to worry about. But in silence, time dissolves. You begin to experience life as one continuous flow. Past and future lose their dominance, and the eternal now expands. This shift does not mean you stop planning or remembering. It means you no longer get lost in them. You handle practical matters from presence, not from anxiety. Silence anchors you in eternity even as you move through time. This is why monks often describe deep meditation as timelessness, not because time stops, but because awareness transcends it. In that timeless space, there is no hurry, no fear, and no lack. Everything is complete as it is. Another profound revelation that arises in silence is the recognition that everything is interconnected. When the noise of separation fades, you begin to feel the life that moves through all beings. The same breath that enters your lungs sustains every creature on earth. The same consciousness that animates you animates the entire cosmos. In this realization, compassion becomes inevitable. You can no longer harm another because you see that there is no other. This insight is not philosophical. It is visceral. You feel it in your bones, in your breath, in your being. And once felt, it changes everything. The walls of ego crumble, replaced by a quiet reverence for all life. You begin to live gently, speak softly, and act wisely. You no longer seek to dominate. You seek to harmonize. This is the essence of Buddhist compassion, born from stillness. As silence deepens, you also begin to understand suffering in a new light. You see that pain is not punishment, but purification. It arises to show you where you are still attached, where you still resist, where you still identify with illusion. Every discomfort becomes an invitation to let go. When faced with pain, the noisy mind asks, "Why me?" The silent mind asks, "What is this teaching me?" The difference between suffering and growth lies in this question. Silence transforms suffering into wisdom because it gives you the space to perceive meaning where the ego sees only loss. You realize that every experience, pleasant or painful, is part of a larger movement guiding you toward awakening. Nothing is wasted, nothing is random. Everything contributes to your return to stillness. In silence, gratitude also blossoms. When the mind quiets, you begin to appreciate the simple miracle of existence. You no longer take things for granted because you are fully present to them. Gratitude is not something you practice. It becomes your natural state. You feel thankful for breath, for light, for life itself. This gratitude is not dependent on conditions. It arises from understanding. You see that life owes you nothing, yet gives you everything. Each moment becomes a gift, and every challenge becomes a teacher. Gratitude expands the heart, and a heart open in gratitude cannot be disturbed. It beats in rhythm with the universe, trusting its wisdom, embracing its flow. Silence also reveals that there is no separation between the sacred and the ordinary. Every act can become meditation if done in awareness. Sweeping the floor, washing dishes, driving or working, all can be expressions of stillness when performed with full presence. The spiritual and the mundane merge into one. This integration is the mark of true maturity. You no longer need to escape life to find peace because you carry peace within you. Wherever you go, silence goes with you. The marketplace becomes as holy as the monastery because holiness is no longer about location. It is about awareness. When silence permeates your life, every step becomes prayer, every breath becomes worship. It is important to understand that silence cannot be forced. You cannot make the mind still through willpower. You can only create the conditions for stillness to arise naturally. This means simplifying your life, reducing unnecessary stimulation, spending time in nature, and engaging in regular meditation. Silence is like a seed. It grows when nurtured gently, not when demanded. Be patient with yourself. Some days the mind will be noisy, and that is fine. The key is not to fight the noise, but to remain aware of it. Awareness itself is silence in action. Each time you return to awareness, even for a moment, the seed of stillness grows stronger. Over time, these moments of silence begin to connect, forming an unbroken thread of presence that weaves through every aspect of your life. Eventually, you reach a point where silence no longer feels like something you visit. It becomes home. You realize that silence was never absent. It was simply overshadowed by noise. The noise may still arise, but it no longer disturbs you. It is like waves on the surface of an ocean that remains vast and calm beneath. You live from that depth, anchored in awareness, untouched by surface turbulence. This is the true meaning of freedom, not the absence of challenges, but the presence of unshakable peace amidst them. In this silence, you discover who you truly are, not the voice in your head, not the roles you play, not the experiences you have, but the still, silent awareness that witnesses it all. This silence is the essence of all spiritual wisdom. It is what the Buddha meant when he spoke of nirvana, not a place, but a state of profound stillness beyond birth and death, beyond gain and loss. In that state, there is nothing to achieve because everything already is. You rest in being, not becoming. You rest in awareness, not identity. You rest in love, not fear. This is the silence that speaks, not with words but with presence. It is the voice of truth that can only be heard when all other voices have faded. And before we move forward to the next stage of this journey, take a moment to reflect on this. Silence is not something you find in the world. It is something you uncover within yourself. The more you listen to it, the more it guides you. If this message resonates with you, if you feel called to deepen your understanding of Buddhist wisdom and the path of inner stillness, I invite you to subscribe to the channel now. Each video, each teaching, each reflection is designed to bring you closer to that silence, the space where peace begins, wisdom unfolds, and the soul finally remembers itself. The strength in stillness, transcending fear, chaos, and desire. There are moments in life when the world shakes around you, when everything you thought was certain begins to collapse, and when fear whispers that you are powerless against the tide of events. In those moments, human instinct tends to reach outward, to grasp, to cling, to run, to fight. Yet Buddhist wisdom reminds us that true strength does not arise from control, but from surrender, not from reaction, but from stillness. The paradox of spiritual power is that it manifests not in movement, but in immovability, not in noise, but in silence. To be still in a world that constantly demands motion is an act of great courage. It is to declare that peace is stronger than panic, that awareness is mightier than fear, and that the soul's calm center cannot be broken by the storms of circumstance. The Buddha taught that fear arises from ignorance, from the inability to see things as they truly are. We fear loss because we believe things belong to us. We fear death because we mistake the body for the self. We fear failure because we confuse identity with achievement. All fear is born from misunderstanding reality. When awareness deepens, fear begins to dissolve, not because external danger disappears, but because perception changes. Stillness is the doorway to this transformation. When the mind becomes quiet, illusion loses its hold. You see that life is not happening to you but through you, that every moment arises and passes with perfect order, and that your suffering was never punishment but resistance. Stillness reveals that fear itself is only a wave on the surface of consciousness. Beneath it lies the ocean, vast, unshaken, eternal. The power of stillness is the power of non-reaction. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding chaos. Every argument, every conflict, every anxiety in the world is sustained by reaction, one thought colliding with another, one emotion igniting the next. But when you remain still, the chain breaks. You stop adding fuel to the fire. This is not passivity, it is mastery. The person who can remain calm in the midst of provocation possesses a power greater than any warrior. The Buddha said that conquering oneself is greater than conquering 1,000 men in battle. Stillness is that conquest. It is victory over the restless mind. When you can observe anger without becoming it, pain without rejecting it, and desire without obeying it, you have discovered freedom. Fear thrives in noise. The more the mind talks, the louder fear becomes. It feeds on speculation. What if, how, when, why? The mind's job is to imagine possibilities, and without awareness it becomes a machine of endless catastrophe. Stillness interrupts that machinery. When you stop engaging with fear's narrative and simply observe the sensation of fear in the body, the tightening of the chest, the quickening of breath, you strip fear of its story. Without story, fear is just energy, a vibration passing through. Observation dissolves identification. The moment you watch fear instead of believing it, fear begins to fade. Because awareness cannot coexist with illusion. Fear may still arise, but it no longer rules. You become the sky again, watching the storm pass through untouched. To live from stillness does not mean you never act. It means your actions arise from clarity, not compulsion. When you act from fear, you reinforce fear. When you act from stillness, you transform reality. The same action can have entirely different consequences depending on its source. One person speaks from anger and creates division. Another speaks from silence and heals. One moves to escape discomfort. Another moves to express wisdom. Stillness aligns your actions with truth because it removes the distortions of ego. From this alignment comes authentic power, the kind that does not seek to dominate, but to harmonize. You no longer chase results. You embody balance, and balance itself becomes influence. Stillness also exposes the futility of desire. The mind constantly runs after something, a better job, a better relationship, a better version of yourself. Believing peace lies at the end of acquisition. Yet the moment you grasp what you wanted, the satisfaction fades, replaced by the next craving. Desire is endless because it is built on the illusion of lack. The ego survives by convincing you that something is missing, but stillness reveals that nothing has ever been missing. When the mind stops running, you feel whole. The hunger dissolves because you see that fulfillment was never in the object. It was in the awareness perceiving it. This understanding does not destroy desire, it transforms it. Desire becomes appreciation, action becomes expression, and life becomes play. You no longer chase what you think you need. You allow life to flow through you as it will. One of the deepest lessons of stillness is learning to face uncertainty without seeking control. The mind equates safety with predictability, but life is inherently unpredictable. Trying to control every outcome is the source of constant anxiety. When you accept uncertainty as the natural state of existence, fear loses its grip. Stillness is trust, the trust that the same intelligence that makes the stars move and the flowers bloom is guiding your life with the same precision. The ego resists this trust because it wants to be the author. But when you look closely, you realize the ego never had control. It could plan and worry, but events unfolded according to a rhythm far greater than thought. Stillness allows you to align with that rhythm. You stop fighting life and start flowing with it. In that flow, effort becomes ease, and even challenges reveal purpose. The world often confuses busyness with strength. People are praised for their activity, their constant doing, their loud confidence, but the wise see that strength lies in composure, not noise. The mountain is silent, yet unshakable. The ocean receives every river without struggle. The sky remains vast, even as storms pass through it. True strength is quiet, because it comes from alignment with truth, not resistance to it. When you are still, you draw from the deepest source of energy, the energy of being itself. You no longer exhaust yourself trying to prove, achieve, or defend. You act without strain because your actions arise from center, not from fear. Others may see calmness as weakness, but time reveals otherwise. The calm endure, the frantic burn out. Stillness also transforms your relationship with pain. When the mind is restless, pain becomes unbearable because it amplifies resistance. Why is this happening? When will it end? How can I escape it? The suffering lies not in pain itself, but in the mental struggle against it. Stillness removes that struggle. When you observe pain directly, without story, it becomes a pure sensation. You begin to see its impermanence. Every feeling, no matter how intense, has a beginning, a peak, and an end. Awareness rides that wave until it dissolves. This does not mean you deny or suppress pain. It means you allow it to exist without identification. Paradoxically, the moment you stop resisting pain, it begins to release its hold. Acceptance is not defeat. It is the highest form of courage. In the same way, stillness changes how you relate to chaos. The external world will never be perfectly ordered. Wars, injustice, noise, unpredictability. But when the inner world is still, chaos loses its power to wound. You stop expecting the world to give you peace. You bring peace to the world. The noise outside becomes background to the harmony within. You may still act to change what can be changed, but your actions are no longer poisoned by anger or despair. They are guided by clarity. This is why the most effective leaders, healers, and teachers in history were people of great stillness. Their calmness was not detachment, it was mastery of self. When you are still, you become a vessel through which wisdom can act without distortion. Stillness teaches you to recognize impermanence as the natural order of all things. Every joy and every sorrow will pass. To cling to either is to suffer. When you embrace impermanence, fear of loss dissolves because you see that nothing real can be lost. The body, possessions, relationships, all change. But the awareness witnessing the change remains. It has watched every joy and every tragedy of your life and remained untouched. That awareness is who you truly are. The more you rest in it, the less you are shaken by life's fluctuations. Death itself loses its terror because you realize that awareness cannot die. It only changes form. This understanding, born from stillness, is the ultimate liberation. Yet to live in stillness does not mean withdrawing from human experience. It means living it fully without being enslaved by it. You can love deeply, work passionately, and engage with life intensely, all while remaining inwardly still. In fact, stillness makes your experiences richer because you are present. You are no longer half alive, distracted by thoughts of elsewhere. You inhabit the moment completely, and in doing so you taste life's fullness. Love becomes purer because it is not tainted by need. Work becomes sacred because it expresses the intelligence of the universe through you. Even rest becomes profound because it reconnects you with being. The journey to this state requires honesty. You cannot fake stillness. You may appear calm on the surface while turmoil rages inside, but awareness knows. True stillness arises only when you face what is unresolved within you, the fears, desires, and memories you have buried. Meditation is the safe space where this confrontation takes place. Sitting in silence, you allow everything to surface. The process can be painful, but each emotion you face loses its power to haunt you. Eventually, you realize that what you feared most were your own projections. The monsters dissolve when met with light. This is why stillness is sometimes described as fire. It burns away illusion. The more you rest in stillness, the more you notice that intuition begins to guide your life. When the mind quiets, the heart speaks. Its voice is subtle but precise. It does not argue or demand. It simply knows. Decisions made from stillness carry a quality of harmony. Even if they lead through difficulty, they unfold correctly. The noisy mind doubts, the silent mind trusts. This trust becomes your compass. You no longer rely on logic alone because you sense a deeper intelligence operating through you. This is not superstition. It is alignment. When you live from stillness, you live in rhythm with the universe, and life begins to cooperate with you. Stillness also awakens humility. The deeper you go, the more you realize how little the ego truly knows. You stop pretending to have all the answers and become a student of existence. Every moment becomes an opportunity to learn. This humility does not diminish you. It expands you. It frees you from the burden of defending opinions and allows you to meet others with openness. When you no longer need to be right, wisdom flows effortlessly. Conversation becomes exploration, not competition. You listen more, speak less, and what you do say carries depth because it emerges from silence, not from noise. Eventually, stillness transforms from something you practice to something you are. The distinction between meditation and life disappears. Walking, eating, speaking all become expressions of the same awareness. You find beauty in simplicity, joy in small things, meaning in every breath. The external circumstances may not change dramatically, but your experience of them does. The same life that once felt heavy becomes light because you are no longer dragging the mind's resistance through it. You begin to live from essence, not from effort. This is the quiet revolution that stillness creates, an inward awakening that silently reshapes the outer world. To sustain this state, constant remembrance is needed. The mind will always attempt to reclaim its throne. It will whisper that you must hurry, that you must fix, that you must worry. But each time you return to stillness, even for a breath, you weaken its control. Repetition builds presence. The more you remember to pause, to breathe, to observe, the more stillness becomes your default. Over time, awareness becomes continuous. You no longer fall into unconscious reaction for long. You move through life with a quiet confidence that comes not from arrogance, but from understanding. There will still be challenges, losses, and moments of confusion. Stillness does not promise immunity from pain. It promises mastery through it. The difference is that now you know where to return. When the world becomes loud, you retreat into silence, not to escape, but to reconnect with truth. You emerge stronger, clearer, and more compassionate. This rhythm of engagement and retreat becomes the heartbeat of spiritual maturity. Like the ocean's tides, you move between doing and being, between sound and silence, between expression and reflection. Balance becomes effortless because you have found the center from which all movement arises. In the end, the strength born of stillness is not loud, visible, or dramatic. It is subtle, steady, and indestructible. It is the power to remain kind in cruelty, patient in delay, peaceful in chaos, and loving in the face of hatred. This is the true power that changes the world, not by force, but by example. A single person rooted in stillness radiates peace that affects everyone they meet. Just as one candle can light 1,000 others without diminishing itself, one still heart can ignite calmness in countless souls. The Buddha's silence continues to echo through centuries, not because of what he said, but because of what he embodied. Presence, compassion, and unshakable serenity. When you embody stillness, you too become that echo. You become a presence that reminds others of their own depth. You become a mirror in which others can see their true selves. This is the ultimate service, to live so deeply rooted in peace that your very being becomes a blessing. You do not need to preach or persuade. Your calmness speaks louder than any argument. The world does not need more noise. It needs examples of quiet strength. And each time you choose stillness over reaction, you contribute to that healing. So let this be your daily practice. When fear arises, return to stillness. When desire burns, return to stillness. When chaos erupts, return to stillness. Do not look for peace outside, for it cannot be found there. It is born within, in the space where thought ends and awareness begins. Protect that space as your most sacred temple. Visit it often, dwell there deeply, and let it shape how you live, love, and act. And before we move to the final part of this journey, remember that these teachings are not meant to be understood merely with the mind, but lived through experience. If these reflections are helping you rediscover your inner center and guiding you toward deeper calm and freedom, make sure to subscribe to the channel now. Continue walking this path with us, expanding your awareness, nurturing your stillness, and awakening the strength that has always lived quietly within you. the strength that no storm can destroy, returning home. The awakening of inner stillness. There comes a time when the seeker must stop seeking. A time when all the spiritual teachings, the endless practices, the philosophies and sacred texts begin to dissolve into something much simpler and infinitely more profound: presence. The long path of searching was never meant to lead you somewhere new. It was meant to bring you back to where you have always been. Stillness is that homecoming. It is the recognition that the peace you were chasing has never been missing. It was buried beneath the noise of wanting, beneath the movement of thought, beneath the constant reaching for what already is. The spiritual path is not about becoming something else, but remembering what you already are. Consciousness itself, vast, silent, awake. Inner stillness is the experience of that remembrance, the quiet realization that the self you were trying to perfect was never real, and the awareness that witnesses it has never been imperfect. All beings are drawn toward this stillness, whether they know it or not. Some call it peace, others happiness, others fulfillment. But what they are truly seeking is rest from the restless mind. The entire world is driven by this unconscious search. People run after money, love, recognition, power, or knowledge, thinking these will quiet the inner noise. For a brief moment, they succeed. Desire fulfilled produces a temporary silence, but soon another craving arises, and the cycle begins again. What they really long for is not the object of desire, but the momentary gap between desires. That gap is stillness, the natural state of being before thought interferes. The Buddha called it nirvana, the extinction of craving, the blowing out of the fire that keeps the mind burning. In that coolness, one finds the true rest that cannot be lost or taken away. To return home to stillness, one must first stop running from silence. The modern world fears silence because it confronts us with ourselves. In silence, there is no distraction to hide behind, no noise to fill the emptiness. But that emptiness is not the enemy, it is the doorway. The ego calls it emptiness because it cannot survive there, but to the awakened heart, that same space is fullness, the fullness of being itself. When you sit in silence and let everything fall away, names, roles, ambitions, even your story, you discover that something remains, that something is you, the real you, the one that was there before you were born and will remain after the body dissolves. You cannot think your way to it. You can only rest into it. It is found not through effort, but through surrender, not through addition, but through subtraction. The less you try to become, the closer you come to being. Stillness reveals that enlightenment is not a distant event waiting to happen, but a continuous unfolding of awareness in this very moment. You do not attain stillness, you uncover it. It is not the reward for practice, but the essence of practice itself. Every breath, every step, every act done with awareness brings you home. When the mind ceases to chase, the heart begins to open. The energy that once fueled ambition now turns inward as light. It illuminates the corners of your being, showing you the patterns of fear and attachment that once ruled you. You see them clearly, and in seeing them, you are freed from them. Stillness becomes the mirror in which illusion disappears. It is not that you become something divine, it is that you finally stop pretending to be something else. As you rest in this awareness, life begins to unfold differently. The need to control, to explain, to justify begins to fade. You no longer need to prove anything, to yourself or to others. You stop measuring your worth by success or failure, because you see that both are temporary ripples on the surface of a vast ocean. The true self, the still awareness behind all movement, remains untouched. You can fail in the world's eyes and remain at peace because you are no longer living for their approval. You are living from your center, and from that center, action becomes effortless, spontaneous and wise. You say what needs to be said, you do what needs to be done, and you let go of what needs to end. The anxiety of trying to shape the future gives way to trust. You begin to realize that life has always been guiding you, that even your mistakes were steps toward awakening. This trust deepens into surrender. Surrender is not giving up, it is giving in to the flow of existence. It is understanding that life knows how to live itself through you. The mind fears surrender because it believes control equals safety. But control is an illusion. You never controlled anything. You only believed you did. The seasons change, the body ages, people come and go, the heart beats on its own. When you see that everything moves according to its own mysterious rhythm, surrender becomes natural. You stop swimming against the current and let the river carry you. You discover that the river was never trying to drown you, it was trying to take you home. Stillness is the realization that the current and the one flowing are not two. You are both the observer and the movement, the silence and the sound, the eternal and the transient. To live from stillness is to live without resistance. You meet each moment as it is, without demanding it be otherwise. This does not mean you become indifferent. It means you respond rather than react. When joy arises, you enjoy it fully, knowing it will pass. When sorrow arises, you allow it fully, knowing it too will pass. The constant evaluation of good and bad, success and failure, right and wrong begins to dissolve. Life becomes what it has always been, an unfolding mystery. In this openness, compassion grows naturally. You see that everyone is doing their best according to their level of awareness. You stop blaming because you understand. Understanding is forgiveness, and forgiveness is freedom. Stillness gives birth to compassion, not as an effort, but as a byproduct of seeing clearly. With stillness as your foundation, even ordinary activities take on a sacred quality. Washing dishes becomes meditation. Walking becomes prayer, listening becomes healing. The world around you does not change, but your perception of it does. You no longer divide experience into spiritual and non-spiritual. Everything becomes part of the same sacred dance. The boundary between the seeker and the sought, between the sacred and the mundane, disappears. This is the essence of awakening, not leaving the world behind but seeing the divine in every aspect of it. The lotus does not avoid the mud. It grows through it, untouched by it. Similarly, stillness does not reject the noise of life. It remains pure within it. Many fear that if they become still, they will lose their passion or drive. But the opposite is true. Stillness does not extinguish vitality, it refines it. When the noise of ego subsides, creativity flourishes because it is no longer forced. The artist, the writer, the healer, the teacher all draw from a deeper well. Their work becomes clearer, freer, more authentic. They are no longer creating to prove something. They are expressing life's movement through them. The absence of ego makes room for grace. This grace is what gives art its power, words their resonance, actions their harmony. Stillness becomes the source of all meaningful creation because it connects you to the infinite source of inspiration itself. The awakened stillness also transforms how you experience relationships. You no longer approach others as means to fulfill your needs, but as mirrors reflecting your own awareness. Love loses its dependency and becomes freedom. You stop asking others to complete you because you realize you were never incomplete. You can love without attachment, give without expectation, and walk away without resentment. This is the highest form of love, love born from wholeness. It does not cling, it allows. It does not demand, it understands. When two people meet from this place of stillness, their union becomes sacred because it is not based on need, but on shared presence. Silence between them becomes communication. They do not fill the space with unnecessary words because their being speaks louder than sound. The mind, however, will try to reclaim its dominance. It will whisper that you are wasting time, that silence is unproductive, that stillness is weakness. It will tempt you with distractions and pull you back into identification. This is natural. The habits of restlessness are old, and they will not vanish overnight. But awareness is patient. Each time you notice the pull of distraction and gently return to stillness, you weaken the old pattern. Do not fight the mind. Observe it. Observation itself is stillness in action. With time, the distance between awareness and thought widens. Thoughts still come, but they no longer define you. You are like the vast sky watching clouds drift by, sometimes dark, sometimes bright, always passing. Eventually, stillness deepens into silence so complete that even the sense of I am meditating disappears. There is only awareness aware of itself. No observer, no observed. Time dissolves. The boundaries of body and mind blur. This is not an altered state, but the most natural state of all. You were born in this awareness. You have simply forgotten. In this silence, there is no fear because there is no separation. The self that feared death was only a temporary idea. Awareness was never born, and so it can never die. This realization is not intellectual. It is felt directly, wordlessly. It is as if the wave suddenly remembers. It is the ocean. Nothing changes, yet everything changes. Life continues, but the center has shifted from illusion to truth. After this recognition, the outer life may look the same, but its inner meaning is transformed. You still play your roles. You may be a parent, a friend, a teacher. But now you play them consciously, without attachment. You participate in the world without losing your inner peace. When challenges arise, they are met with equanimity. When joy arises, it is savored without clinging. This is the balance of the awakened life, fully engaged yet inwardly free. You live in the world, but not of it. You are no longer seeking God in distant heavens. You see the divine in every breath, in every moment of existence. Stillness also changes your relationship with death. You begin to see death not as an ending, but as transformation. Just as waves return to the ocean, forms dissolve back into the formless. What dies is the temporary expression. What remains is awareness itself. When you live in stillness, you no longer fear death because you no longer fear life. They are two sides of the same eternal movement. Every ending becomes sacred, every beginning a continuation. The grief that once felt unbearable becomes tender wisdom, an acknowledgement of impermanence. You no longer cling to what passes because you trust what remains. This trust fills life with gratitude. Even loss becomes grace because it points you back to what cannot be lost. As you continue to dwell in stillness, your perception of time changes. The rush of hours, the anxiety of deadlines, the longing for the future, all fade. You live moment to moment, fully present. Time becomes circular instead of linear. Each breath feels complete, self-contained. You stop living in anticipation and start living in participation. The past no longer defines you. The future no longer enslaves you. Every instant becomes eternity in miniature. This is what the masters meant when they spoke of the timeless now. It is not a mystical abstraction, but the reality of presence. When you are here, truly here, there is no elsewhere to reach. Peace is complete. And then something even deeper unfolds. Gratitude merges into reverence. You begin to sense the sacred pulse of life in everything, the breeze through the trees, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the stillness between sounds. You see that existence itself is a miracle too vast for the mind to grasp. Awe becomes your natural state. You bow not out of submission, but out of recognition. You see that the divine is not outside or above, but within and around, expressing itself in infinite forms. You understand that every being is an expression of the same stillness, wearing a different face. To harm another would be to harm yourself. Compassion becomes instinctive because separation no longer feels real. At this stage, words lose importance. Silence becomes your native language. You speak only when necessary, and when you do, your words carry weight because they arise from depth. Others feel the peace behind them, even if they cannot name it. This is why great masters often spoke so little. Their silence communicated what language could not. You, too, begin to teach through presence. Your very being becomes a message. You do not need to convince anyone. You simply embody what they are seeking. Your calmness becomes a reminder, your stillness a mirror. Without trying, you begin to influence the world around you, not through force but through resonance. Eventually, the distinction between meditation and daily life disappears. You are meditation. Every action, every breath, every step is infused with awareness. This is not effort, it is ease. You no longer try to be mindful, you simply are. The watcher and the watched have become one. This unity is the essence of enlightenment, not a goal but a realization that the seeker was never separate from the sought. The circle closes, and in that closing, all striving ends. You rest in what has always been. The journey of stillness ends where it began, in the heart of now. Nothing was ever missing, nothing was ever broken. The mind created 1,000 paths, but the truth was always immediate. You return home not by moving forward, but by turning inward. And when you arrive, you realize you never left. You were the stillness looking for itself, the silence longing to be heard, the peace pretending to be lost. The game of searching ends in laughter, the laughter of recognition. You finally see that you are not a wave struggling against the current. You are the ocean dreaming of movement. This realization does not make you special. It makes you simple. The arrogance of spiritual identity dissolves because you understand that everyone is this stillness, whether they know it or not. There are no enlightened and unenlightened, only those who remember and those who forget. You stop judging and start serving. Your life becomes an offering to the whole. Every act, no matter how small, becomes a form of devotion. You give not to gain merit, but because giving is your nature. Love flows effortlessly because there is no longer anyone separate to withhold it. This is the final flowering of stillness, the transformation of being into love. And so you live quietly, joyfully, in harmony with all things. You no longer seek to escape the world or fix it. You simply embody peace within it. You walk slowly, speak gently, and act wisely. You leave footprints of calm wherever you go. People may not understand you, but they feel something in your presence, something ancient, steady, and kind. You do not need recognition because you are content in anonymity. You are free because you no longer need anything to be different. Life flows through you, unhindered, and in every heartbeat you hear the echo of eternity. This is the destination of all paths, the silence behind every prayer, the truth behind every teaching. Stillness is not something you reach. It is what remains when the search ends. It is your home, your source, your essence. The journey was only to remind you of what you have always known. And as we conclude this exploration of Buddhist wisdom, remember that the words themselves are only signs pointing back to silence. Do not hold on to them. Let them dissolve into experience. Sit quietly for a while, feel your breath, sense the life moving within and around you. Notice the stillness that has been here all along. That stillness is you. If this journey has touched you, if you have felt even a glimpse of the peace that lies beyond thought, let it continue. Subscribe to the channel, stay with us, and allow these teachings to accompany you as daily reminders of your own light. Each video, each reflection, each pause will guide you deeper into yourself, into the vast, infinite stillness that is your greatest power, your truest home, and your eternal truth.